She Killed in Ecstasy from 1971 is the third Jess Franco film I've seen, and I think at this point I can definitively say that I am not a Jess Franco fan in general. I was blown away by Female Vampire, and I thought, wow, what beautifully filmed shots in this movie. It's schlocky, but man, I love it. And then I watched Vampiros Lesbos, and I didn't like it as much, and now I just watched She Killed in Ecstasy, and it was made around the same time as Vampiros Lesbos and has the same cast for the most part, although this movie is not supernatural, it's more of a thriller. So I think what happened was I watched Female Vampire and I was just mesmerized by Lena Romay being nude throughout the whole movie and just looking absolutely smashing for 90 minutes, and I was swept off my feet by that performance. She Killed in Ecstasy stars Soledad Miranda as the wife of a mad scientist who's doing some really unethical stuff. He is blacklisted by his peers and commits suicide. So she decides to avenge him by seducing all the people who blacklisted him and murdering them. And with the men, she's cuts their throats and chops their dicks off. So there's some really nasty, gnarly stuff in this movie, and there is a lot of nudity, but I didn't think it was any more or less than usual. It's odd, there's more nudity in the trailer, I think, than in the movie. I have to be careful with the footage I'm showing here. Now, this movie is a thriller. There's no supernatural stuff in it, and I think that is to the movie's detriment. Without the kind of spooky, dreamy elements of Female Vampire and Vampiros Lesbos, you're left with something that feels very dated, unfortunately, and doesn't have that kind of special sauce to it. I'm sure this won't be the last Jess Franco movie I ever watch, but I feel like I would rather rewatch Female Vampire at this point than dive into another one that I haven't seen. Leave No Trace is a 2018 drama starring Ben Foster and Thomasin McKenzie as a father and daughter. They are living in a public park, living off the land and camping in the woods, basically. When they are discovered in the beginning of the movie, it kind of shakes up their world because they are now in the system where were previously outside of it. The film is about their struggles to adjust to modern technological society, let's say. I thought this film was really special. There's definitely something to the fact that there is no violence, there's no trauma, there's no even loud noises. Nobody even raises their voice in this movie. As a result, it can feel a little bit slow, and I've seen people even refer to it as a little boring at times. But I really like that the filmmakers went for a softer approach to analyzing the mental health of veterans and the systems of social services that we have in the modern era. I also just loved the main characters and the bond that they shared with each other. This was shot in the Pacific Northwest, and the environments are beautiful. There's a lot of woodsy, lush green trees and stuff like that. It's very, very beautiful. And as troubling as some of the elements of this movie are, it can be very cozy if you're looking for a slow, soft, and cozy watch. Just beware that it's not fast-paced or loud or exciting. If you're willing to come out of your comfort zone in that way, I highly recommend this movie. Hundreds of Beavers is a 2022 comedy that is heavily inspired by Charlie Chaplin movies, especially The Gold Rush, Bugs Bunny cartoons, and TV shows like Jackass, and especially Trigger Happy TV. This is one of the wackier things I've seen in a long time, and I feel like I really should have loved it, but I didn't. It's mostly green screened, I would say. It's black and white, and that is to make the cartoony aspects a little bit easier to digest. The movie's about a guy who was a bootlegger, I guess, and the beavers like destroyed his apple orchard, and he takes up a life as a fur trapper, and he's trying to marry the furrier, and the only thing holding him back is the beavers. It is a silent film in a sense, but there's a lot of sound design in this movie. There's no spoken roles, but our characters all go huh, oh throughout the whole movie, and there's tons of great sound effects. Most of the animals are played by people in costumes, and there is some puppet work as well. A major knock against this movie is that it feels a little bit too long. I think if it were 90 minutes or less, it would have been snappier. And part of what makes me say that is there are just ideas coming at you constantly throughout this movie. And most of them are pretty clever, but it gets exhausting after a while. I think a shorter runtime would have benefited that. I did enjoy the element of the violence transitioning from cartoonish violence to disturbing violence towards the end of the movie. I thought that was a nice touch. I also thought it was a nice touch that every character in this movie is Roman Catholic, including the beavers. This is a very rare movie for me in that I highly recommend it to anybody. It's not for kids, but if you are willing to watch this kind of experimental, wacky film, then go for it. For me, something about it just felt like a bad dream, and I didn't enjoy it overall. However, I think in a year or two I can rewatch this and I might take something totally different out of it or a different level of enjoyment. So if you have access to it, check it out. Tamala 2010, A Punk Cat in Space, is an anime from 2002 which features Tamala, a cat who was kidnapped from her litter and works for her human mother as a space pilot and decides to go back and try and find her original family. But that is barely scratching the surface of this wild and surreal movie. The animation style of this movie is very strange. I would say it's a blend of 60s anime with something like a Futurama. Also, it's mostly in black and white or green and gray, like a Game Boy color scale. And then there's these interspersed CGI scenes which are pretty dated. They're very busy and don't look particularly great. So I think in general this whole movie doesn't get by on its looks. It gets by on its weirdness, the foul-mouthed main character, and also the music, which is really great. Throughout the movie there are interesting things happening and there's some deep symbolism. There's a corporation that runs the world that was based on an ancient cult, so you get all this lore that doesn't make a ton of sense and will kind of leave you wondering what is this all about? How does it all connect? And maybe in the sequels it's explained a little bit deeper, but for what it is, it's a fun little ride and I got enough enjoyment out of it that I will probably eventually check out the sequels. And that's going to do it for this one. I thank you for watching to the end. If you want to see more of these short reviews, there's a whole playlist on my channel and I'll see you on the next one.